And yeah, for me, like the biggest, what this chapter was about is like certain ways of communication alienates us from our natural state of compassion. And yeah, there are specific forms of language and communication that contribute to our behavior violently towards each other and ourselves. And yeah, I'd like if someone wants to share some thoughts about this chapter before we start with the moralistic judgments. Maybe we do around. Like, do you want to share something, Aloysius?
Can I go last?
Yeah, let's pass it to David. Did you read the chapter?
Can I go second last?
Okay, Juan, take it over.
Okay. Well, I think that it was very interesting to be reading this this um, this this chapter, because like it summarizes a lot of different behaviors that we do in very like concise bullet points, and I really liked it. I have certain examples that of each, and I think it would be very interesting to do that in this booklet. And I will pass it to LBS.
Hey there, I'm just listening today.
Okay, and Ryder. Okay.
I can. Yeah, let's try again with David and Aloysius. Otherwise, I'll just move on.
I'm ready.
LB and I will just be watching how it goes, it sounds like. Just saying hi.
Okay, perfect.
I'm ready.
I can say a couple things on it.
Yeah, let's pass it to Aloysius and then.
I love how
David.
ready you are. Like, I get it.
I am. I was, going from one class to another, and my brain wasn't settled yet. But, yeah, something about this that I really, really liked was, I've been obsessed with the rules lately, just in my thoughts, kind of like, processing something. I recently, allowed my daughter to break a rule at school. She's allowed to have gum, but she's not allowed to, like, give it to other people to get like social status or whatever. Like, it's a rule at the school and she gets to break it because of her brain, and we're gonna let her self-soothe with gum while she's in class. Well, my co-parent didn't like this, and my co-parent didn't like me leading with breaking the rules or something like that. Like, that was something that they didn't like. And well, my co-parent's white and I'm black, and I have an aversion to blindly following laws, because they're like just things in general. We don't like blindly follow anything because we don't know how it could be harming others. Like, we should be questioning the rules and things around us and seeing if they genuinely apply. Like, that's something I'm actually trying to teach my daughter, is to like question her environment, but logically. And when I was looking at the rules, everybody listing like, I didn't do this, or I did this because of this, or I did this because of that. It's a nuance I've been looking at. I've been noticing in activist spaces where some of the language we used takes away from the actual issue, the point that's like the problem. We have a lot of like things we can say that make it so that we don't have to be accountable, like don't tone police me. And then depending on who they are, maybe you can't actually like say anything after that point, because then, like, you'd be in the wrong. It's just all the rules about racism and activism and how we talk, just like our language. There's a lot of rules, I feel like, that are actually harmful for us, and like they're nuanced. And that really came through when I was looking at that list of like all the things. It's just like Yeah, there's a lot of shit we can say that can make it so we don't have to actually be accountable for our actions because we just like say some rule in society. We're like, oh, this social norm, and then it's like, oh yeah, that's valid. Yeah, that brought up a big deal for me. That's my share.
Yeah, that was great. The part of that sometimes we use language to denial our responsibility. That was great.
Yeah, thanks. It made me think of whenever I hear that's the way we've always done this, that it's like alarm bells go off, and I have to think really carefully about what are the motivations for an action or a reaction. Life alienating communication, they call it. That's pretty hardcore, really. And I also draw upon my parenting experience to connect to the book. And it's wild. It was just this morning I was in a pretty heart-to-heart with my 19-year-old daughter about facing responsibility and facing life, and do a person can face it or run away from it. And there's no real standing still. It's either growth or slowly going the other way. That's what I think about it. And I have a little saying that I repeat to my kids all the time, and it's compare and despair, because the moment comparison begins, it's just a recipe for disaster. There's always, by whatever metric is the measurement, there's always better and worse, or more or less. And so compare and despair. Beware. I'm done. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, guys. Yeah, now we should talk about the moralistic judgment. And yeah, this is one type of life alienating that implies wrongness or badness. And it's in all our values, like what I value wrong, what I value good. And this kind of moralistic judgment that leads to life alienating. And yeah, this trap us on the world of right and wrong. And yeah, judgment clarify and dichotomize people and their actions. So we only can be care about what's good and what's bad, what's smart, what's dumb, what's realistic, what is realistic, and yeah, those kind of things. And yeah, I really like the example that I don't know, the author, he or she, put in the book about, like if your girlfriend is asking for affection, you think, oh, you're needy and dependent. But if you're asking for it, it's, oh, you are insensitive and aloof. Like, it's, you put the same thing with different values, and and that express our own values and needs, and it creates a defensive and resistance. And when other people agrees on those, it's out of fear, guilt, or shame. And when this happen, and when they engage with those feelings, that makes them to decrease their self-esteem. And like the solution proposed in the book is like, when you talk about, I know violence is bad, then it's better to say like something like, I'm fearful to use violence to resolve conflict. I'd like if we could share like some experience. Like I could start. Like when I remember, like I was playing competitive games back in the days, and every time like my teammates were doing something bad, it's like, oh guy, are you blind? What are you doing? Like this is not acceptable. What's going on? And then when you're doing the mistake, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, that's my bad. And and this prevent us to winning the game, because I was bringing this was breaking the team somehow. So I don't know if someone wants to share. Hello, Durgadas. We're talking about the chapter 2 of the NVC book, Communication That Brought Compassion. If you want to say some words.
My favorite part of this was up bit where it said that the judgments that we have of others, if you go up to page 35, analysis of others, they're actually expressions of our own needs or values, right? And so, that's my favorite. That's my favorite thing about NVC in terms of. That's what I was saying before, like in some of the stuff that I was saying, like if you look at the quadrant model from Ken Wilber, he actually talks about, and narratively, if you have an I at a certain developmental level is interacting with an organization that's at a different developmental level, you're going to analyze others according to your own needs and values as you are in that developmental level. And so when you interact with another organization that's asking for different things that you might not be familiar with or are confusing to you, then you're going to tend to make moralistic judgments about whether they're right or wrong based on that kind of a thing. And so I think that's a huge thing for us to remember in terms of, gravitons and when we're dealing with our caseload.
I also want to say that this is something that is very used in conflict resolution and in conflict management, because we tend when we first see a conflict, the first communication that we get from the parts is a judgment. Like the most conflicts start saying they are that, and
Right.
what we try to do to try to clear some of that layers that blur the problem is to say to try to make independent the problem from the person. Like the person is not the problem. There is a problem happening, and there is a person who is involved. There are several actors that are involved in the problem, but there's not one actor that is the problem, and there's a situation happening, but you cannot say like it's all because of their fault, because always when there is a fight there are two people involved, and every time that we point at someone there are three fingers pointing at us. So yeah, it's great to not make these moralistic judgments.
Anyone else want to share something about moralistic judgment?
I also liked this, that when people associate us in their mind with those feelings of judgment, we decrease the likelihood of the responding compassionately to our needs and values in the future. It's like you may harm someone and they may forgive you, but when people learn about their mistakes, they don't want to be harmed anymore. So like they will no longer try to comply with us or to follow what we say, because yeah, they will be triggered by fear and not by their own intrinsic motivation.
I think the reverse side of that is the beatings will continue until morale improves. This idea is like, that's exactly what it is. How could you expect that continuing to treat me this way would, result in some positive thing,
I appreciated seeing classifying and comparisons written as judgments, just like the connection there, like just yeah, something like having that language planted in my seed. Like I have a lot of shame dialogue that comes up. Like I have to constantly combat just a ton of shame dialogue for like so many reasons. And yeah, reading that was just like fine tuning the work that I'm doing, calibrating on my brain, trying to work on that like neuroplasticity to be well, like noticing, oh yeah, that's this too, and just, yeah, trying to do better things with thoughts when those thoughts start to toil and turn.
Also, that this of judging people promotes violence, because when we say like he is the conflict or they are the enemy, that fosters um, yeah, misunderstandings, and like to stand in a defensive position.
Yeah, and what I found like super curious about is like that research that done by Harvey's. Like he studied the literature of every culture, and the cultures that were using more violent words in their literature, they end being like more violent cultures, which is, I mean, at the same time, I think like how is these people living, right? Like to make more accurate study, but I think like the worst people is using like it it's dictates what they are doing, and I think that that's super interesting. And then yeah, about making comparisons, like it was Will talking like it's another form of judgment, and yeah, like you can compare like the beauty, the achievements, like, and it's saying on the book like it makes you miserable, but I'm not sure at all. Like I'm always comparing myself to the people I or the things I want to do, but just for self-improvement, and I do not, it's, I think it's more depending on which eyes you're looking into it, because if you look at, if you're a football player and you look at Cristiano Ronaldo with envy, yeah, maybe that's bad. But if you're looking, oh, he's good because I don't know his physics or whatever reason, and you try to do that and improve it in the way, yeah, I feel like it can be beneficial too. But yeah, what do you guys think about that?
Well, for me, it's a thing where it's always going to be, well, if I'm negatively comparing myself, right? If I'm seeing somebody as oh, that person learned these lessons so that I don't have to, kind of thing. That's a different thing entirely, and sounds like you're, yeah, sort of positively comparing yourself, being like, okay, what is it that I need to do to be like that or to become that way? That's definitely a positive approach, but I think it's extremely tempting to most people to negatively compare themselves, which is something we see from Facebook, for example. Like a huge amount of our mental health issues comes from negatively comparing yourself to the highlight reel you see on Facebook. You know what I mean? So you're comparing how you feel your real life to be with someone else's, like slideshow of awesomeness that they're sharing with you, and so that's what I think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I think the same, that social media like promotes so much falseness. Like there's always people like eating great, and always like people is like well dressed and happy, and that is not like real life. Like we spend half of our life in pajamas, and like what we see is like elegant clothes, and like so much fanciness in what social media promotes. So yeah, I think that each one have like an experience, and each experience is as meaningful as the other, even if the material activities that you can display in like in photographs or like, yeah, money doesn't buy happiness. So it's not the material value, but the free will that we all have to make our choices.
I also think it's an interesting thing to examine where he compared value judgments and moralistic judgments. In many ways, value judgments can be moralistic judgments. So, for example, like when I talk about decolonization, I often talk about how one of the facts of living under narcissistic abuse is that a person will basically other you on the basis of, and they will basically tell you that you have more value or less value based on some arbitrary thing, right? So like race or color of your skin or what your sexual orientation is or your neurodiversity or whatever, because you're not exactly like that. And what you do is you say, I'm going to put a value judgment out ahead of it, and then I'm going to place a moralistic judgment on top of that. And that's like a 1-2 punch. So it's a big problem. And then they get you to swallow all of that idea, like I'm less than because I have autism, or my wife is less than because she's got brown skin. You know what I'm saying? Like it just doesn't make any sense to me. But I do think that because we confuse value judgments and moralistic judgments, then we tend to use them interchangeably. And I think it's an important thing to be able to break them up and to be able to understand that if we've been a victim of what seems to be a value judgment, like I'm a neurodiverse person because I do X, Y, or Z, then a moralistic judgment is soon to follow. So it's so if we undo that problem within ourselves, then it might be easier to see and parse that kind of negativity that's coming in, or the negativity that we've already experienced. I think that was further up somewhere when we were looking earlier in the book. Oh yeah, it was above this. This classifying and judging, or sorry, yeah.
Okay.
It was further up, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, here.
Value judgments, moralistic judgment. So, yeah. I just think that a lot of abusive situations that we live in do both of these things, and they interchange them and make them difficult to understand. And I think that type of lack of understanding is a kind of it's almost like a type of emotional gaslighting. If you constantly interchange things or change the rules or move the goalposts, and you're saying, okay, value judgment, moralistic judgment doesn't matter, it's very confusing for the person participating in it. So that's why I like this so much, because it parses everything.
Yeah, it all are beliefs that sometimes we receive so much, and sometimes in like an impositive way, that sometimes we don't question them, and it's very important to question things, and that also takes us to the denial of responsibility. That I really liked this part of the chapter.
Yeah, and yeah, basically, like we in some situations deny, or we rely like for actions when we attribute to a cause, like bake in personal forces or condition, authorities dictating it, roles, impulses. Like yeah, every time we feel it's some kind of force outside us, and I feel like this happens a lot in actual society, like it happens to me, like for sure, like it's like someone is like, oh, we should go outside now, and but I have to do this, like, and no, even if I do not have to do this because I can do it later on, I just feel I have to do this, and I just do that this way, and then you not doing other things that may be more important, and yeah, and your condition is like you are not doing the other thing because you want to do this, and maybe when you're doing this you're hurting other people, or actually not doing things you should do, like doing dishes or whatever.
I remember that when we were in Barcelona, I was talking precisely about this reference of Hannah Arendt, um, that she spoke that on the trials of some Nazi um, like high ranks, they just said like, I had to do it. And why? Because that were the orders of my superiors. And that then she developed a concept that is the banality of evil, and that the most evil things are not done by people that are different than us. That the evilness is not a quality that we can differentiate from one human to another, and it's more of what kind of systems and beliefs are we reproducing blindly, and how sometimes we reproduce violence blindly, and or we just say, yeah, things should be like that, and we don't question ourselves, like the freedom that we have on every act.
I actually think the most evil thing is to be in denial. That's my basic assessment. Like, if you look at the Hindu psychology, there's a thing called tamas, which is the hiding power of the mind, and then there's projection, which is the veiling or the projecting power of the mind. And what I've noticed is people who are in so much denial, or so many different types of denial. I love this chapter because it actually, what it's doing is it's unwinding all these different kinds of denial. Right? Denial of responsibility, yeah, there's just, there's a lot of different kinds of unwinding of different kinds of denial. Or like, I always talk about like weasel words like bacon, right? People say, oh, I love bacon, Well, what you love is a dead pig that we raised and slaughtered in a tiny little, do you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't talk about the reality of what that is. We talk about bacon, right? It's just a lie. It's like it denies the responsibility we have about, the raising and, of our food, and we're effectively genociding these little animals just so that we can have bacon memes everywhere on the internet. It just, it's kind of weird. So like, this denial of responsibility is baked into so many parts of our culture that we almost forget that it exists. And so it's just very incredible.
I also
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, some time ago I also saw a film like that. It's based on reality, and it was an experiment. Like, some a part of the group, they were like the police, and then on the other part of the group they were prisoners, and they were, passing the days. They were behaving this way, and it's like they feel like this is the correct way to behave, but their role was actually modifying their behavior, even until the point, like, because one was a police and his friend was a prisoner, he was even hitting him. I mean, it was a film, but yeah, like, this stuff happens. Like, oh, I have this role, I have to do that.
Yeah, there've been classical psychological experiments that do those things.
And it's always very easy to responsibilize, to make the other responsible for what we are feeling, but we are really the owners of our feelings. Like, we can choose whether if feeling sad or feeling happy, and we are the ones that process the signal link from the other. So like, yeah, sometimes we blame others for what we're feeling, but we should take that responsibility, because that's what we are responsible for our mind and for our feelings and for our body.
But look at all the songs that say, "You make me feel," you're making somebody feel something. It's just like, it's so in our culture. There's so many things, like even just things like emotional blackmail, in relationships, where people will be like, "Well, if you don't do this thing, then," they just make like some kind of ultimatum from whatever. That's another sort of form of this denial of responsibility, right? Rather than just talking about your needs and your feelings, and so It's interesting.
And she says, like, we are dangerous when we are not conscious of our responsibility for how we behave, think, and feel. It's like if we were all the time judged as minors. There's like a majority of age in all countries because we should be responsible for how we behave, it's not that we act and we expect that there are no responses for the way we behave. So it's important that we can coordinate our actions so that they produce what the outcome that we want, because sometimes we want something, but because of not taking care of how we are like communicating it, then we end up having like the opposite result to what we were aiming. And if we do something, we should be responsible for it. I have this image that is like if you nail like a nail into a wood, you can take out the nail, but there will be still the hole in the table. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, you can gain forgiveness and you can stop doing things, but what you did leaves always a mark in the other.
There's another thing that I take from yoga philosophy or yoga psychology that I often think about, and I always think about actions have three effects, and the first effect is upon the person who's doing the act, and then the second is on the target of the act. So let's say I'm going to hit you. First, there has to be a really big problem inside of me. Second, it's going to be the act, and then the third is on any of the witnesses. So I always like to think, in terms of when I'm acting, there's these three different parts. And it actually helps then to go, okay, so if I'm going to, beat up on somebody, there's something inside of me that I have to look at first, because that's the very first thing that's happening. And that helps me to sort of keep responsibility for myself.
Yeah, and yeah, at the end of the chapter, she also talk about other forms of life alienating. And yeah, basically it's like, yeah, I didn't have this on the summary, but yeah, when we make demands, we ask people to do things, but because of our needs, not because of their needs. Yeah, maybe Johan can explain this chapter better than me.
Yeah, that when we make a demand, we sometimes take like the freedom out of the other person and we objectify them. When we like make a demand to someone, we use them as they were like tools, and like, okay, I need to have this done, so you do that, and we are not recognizing the full humanness of that other. And yeah, sometimes we try to have like an authority over someone, but like everyone is just like they're owners of their own body, and we cannot make someone do something without they wanting so what we should always try is to keep in mind how can we satisfy the other needs, so that he can help me satisfy mine. And we can like make requests and we can make suggestions, but we can never like force the other to do something, or we can do that, but that would promote violence.
Yeah, every time, like, people collaborate, I think we really need to think about win-win situations. Like, both parts need to win, otherwise it would not work. I mean, without applying violence, of course. But then we go back to what we were saying at the beginning. Then the other person, every time he's interacting with you, his self-esteem is going down. So yeah, this is very bad.
And this was related to what David was mentioning earlier. That yeah, it's also an I think, because I don't have children, but I think that being a parent is a humbling experience, because you sometimes want the your children to do something because of their good, but um, like we cannot impose our authority, and we rather try to should try to make the other learn how to behave. And yeah, and he said like when they were actually listening to him, um it was because he did something that he didn't want to do, like being mad with them. And yeah, he continues saying that this is a very cultural thing, and we grew up speaking language that encourage us to label, compare, demand, and pronounce judgment. But it's great to be having this kind of spaces of like NVC and frameworks, because it is not like just NVC. It's that NVC is a framework, but there are different frameworks that promote more or less like the same idea of questioning ourselves, of trying to be mindful of with our communication with the other, and how do we actually can achieve what we want.
Yeah, and then like then is like the summary. But yeah, I think we covered it all. I don't know if anyone wants to share something, but otherwise we could end up earlier. I think the chapter is short, so
I think like covering really fast the summary will be good, and then we finish up remembering who are the next facilitators, and yeah, we can finish at in 3 minutes. So yeah, like some of the types of life alienating communication are moralistic judgment that imply wrongness or badness, the making comparisons that can block compassion, and not being aware that we are responsible for our own thoughts, feelings, and actions, and communicating our desires in the form of demands. So the next chapter is chapter 3, observing without evaluating. I think last week we said that this chapter was going to be led by Aloysius.
That's right. I got excited about the number 3.
Perfect. Okay, so we are going to continue next week with chapter number 3. And if I remember correctly, I think like Bianca was with number 4, but we will double check next week. So thanks everyone for joining.
thank you, Juan. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, Septi,
See you
for
around.
leading. It was a great chapter.
If you do you want me to prepare